Guru Group Coaching Strategy presentation. My name is Jeff Kassman with Invocabo. Let's get started. First of all, who this presentation is for, who we believe this strategy is effective for. First, you should really be an expert in your subject matter, and we find this fits well with teachers, consultants, coaches, advisors, counselors, and therapists. One of the important things is that a majority of your clients or students or prospective market need to have the same kinds of problems. If you find yourself in your one-on-one sessions, in your coaching calls and your material, constantly repeating yourself, hearing the same questions over and over again for a majority of your clients, then a group coaching model is a good fit. It's also important that you solve big, meaningful, urgent problems. If they're not big and meaningful, then it's difficult to justify the higher prices that we want to charge. If they're not important and urgent, it's difficult to charge the higher prices that we want to solve. Now, even if you solve big and meaningful problems, and even if they're urgent, not everyone who has those problems will be motivated. But our marketing funnel takes care of that by filtering out the people who are not sufficiently motivated, the people who would never pay the higher price, the people who won't execute the fantastic information you give them. That's the job of our marketing funnel, to filter those people out. So we don't worry about that problem right now. Now, this is for you if you find that you're always repeating yourself over and over again. If you're giving the same advice to different people every time somebody comes into the office or joins you on a call, you're saying the same kinds of things over and over again. This is a good fit, because once we get into a group, then you can say at one time and still reach those many people. Now, if you're not generating the income that you're looking for, or if you feel that you've plateaued, you're stuck trading your time for dollars, and it's difficult for you to scale up because you can only work so many hours in a week, or you feel that you can't raise your rates any further. If you don't have a way to scale, if you're a one-person operation and you're finding that it's difficult for you to create additional products and build more value or write more books because you have to spend time with people to generate the revenue that you need, this is a good fit for you. And if you're looking to work less, or you want to impact more lives, this is a good fit. If you want to work less because you have other interests, family, faith, other activities, or if you are really driven by creating value and solving problems for more people, then this is a great way to go. So here's what the group coaching model looks like. We create a 6 to 8 week module course that is presented online. Imagine signing into a password protected site and having a series of modules that are self-paced, where the information is presented very much like in this desktop video. It could also be supplemented with transcripts and other material that a person can go through as quickly as they desire. They can log in from any device anywhere in the world if they have an internet connection, and they can take that material. Now, 6 to 8 weeks is our recommendation. There's no reason the course could not be longer, for example. It could be 10 weeks. But one of the philosophical presuppositions we have is that we want to solve problems quickly. If we don't solve problems quickly, then we are not staying true to our desire to solve big, urgent problems. So that's one of the values that we create. So people for whom time is very important, business people who recognize the lost opportunity costs of not making changes, or people who are in a personal situation where the pain threshold is very high every day, they want to solve problems quickly. So we are sensitive to that. So the people who buy into your group coaching model get a login, and they have access to all this information, the prepared material that we've already described, weekly recorded calls that you do, where you have collected questions over the previous week from all of your group members. And then you address those on the call all at once. And the reason we do this is we want to get out of that one-to-one relationship. We want to address group questions. And we want you to have time to prepare the very best answers to those questions. The old way of doing things, your client or student asks you a question and you give the very best answer off the top of your head. And it might be the very best answer, or it just may be the best answer that came to you at that moment. But if you assemble these questions, and as you prepare for that weekly phone call, you can really do your research, really think about it, reflect on it, the odds are you're going to have better answers. And then those calls are recorded, so you're not handling live questions. You're just addressing those that have been asked to you. Those calls are recorded, and then the members have access to those phone calls as well. Now, the material that is part of this module course could be video. That could be video that's you on camera. This is particularly helpful if you're demonstrating something. It can be desktop video, which is what I refer to as this kind of a presentation, a PowerPoint presentation that's recorded and has both video and audio. It could be audio, for example, recorded lectures and podcasts, those kinds of things. It can be the transcripts of those media productions. It can be written documents, and it could also be links to other online resources. At the end of the course, you're then going to upsell that individual to some additional program. It could be a monthly VIP group. For example, they would have ongoing access to the calls that you're recording every week. You could have additional material that you're providing to that VIP group. For example, the latest case studies, the latest testimonials that you're getting. Here's what John Doe has done in the last 6 months. Here's how it has improved his life or his business. Here are the examples. Here's a little bit of a way that he tweaked his personal experience, and maybe that'll be helpful for you. Maybe it's additional interviews of you or by you for experts in this area. But the point is that this initial group coaching model is just the first step. We want a second and perhaps a third additional step, a higher level product, for example, maybe a product that is 2 or 3 times the price of this initial course, or a monthly VIP group where people can stay in maintenance. And you may give them email support. You may have unique phone calls for them. And this is where we really begin to leverage the power of this model, because your profit margins will be so much larger. For every 10 people who are in your initial group coach, there may be 1 or 2 who are actual prospects for the long-term ongoing income. Let's talk about your audience. This is very, very important. You need to solve a very big, important, and urgent problem. When you do this and you do it quickly, you're creating lots of value for them. And that value that you're creating justifies the fees that you're going to charge. If you're not creating lots of value, then you cannot easily and honestly justify the higher prices that you need to charge for this model to work. Now, if you are in a business model and you can generate lots of revenue, create lots of profit, solve lots of expense problems, then of course it's going to be easy for you to justify a higher value. If you have a man who's running a $1 million a year business and you can show him how to double his business next year, that's a lot of value that you've created. But the pain and fear of loss can also be powerful for someone who does not have an economic justification to act. Let's say it's a failing marriage. Let's say it's a person who has a serious health problem. Maybe it's a person who has been victimized by trauma and abuse. These painful life experiences and the consequences of not solving them can be so great that they easily justify a high-ticket coaching model. Now, we're not going to sell to the 90%. We're not going to sell probably even to the 95%. We are selling to that top group of people who both have these problems and can afford to solve them. Now, the truth is, most of us would love to solve all of the problems of the world. The reality is we simply cannot. Not only can we not reach them all, we can't afford to solve all of those problems. So we focus on doing what we can, where we can, with the people we can. Now, as we talk about this audience, if it's easy for us to target our people, especially online, then that's going to be very helpful. For example, if we can go to Facebook and identify people based on their job titles, based on the activities that they do and the things that they like, then that makes it easy for us to scale our model. If we can go to Google and we can ask Google to target a certain kind of people by their age, by their demographics, by their home ownership or other factors, then that makes it easy. We are not entirely dependent upon digital methods. I'm still a big believer in direct mail. It's an outstanding way to reach people. It's great for scaling up. It's very consistent. Facebook and Google, for example, are always changing their algorithms. What worked yesterday may not work today, may not work tomorrow. I've seen $1 million a year of businesses destroyed in a matter of a few days because an online giant has changed their marketing method. Direct mail is very unlikely to change and unlikely to change quickly. So if we can use offline resources, we want to do that. But there are upsides and downsides to each. And for example, direct mail, it's not as easy to experiment. It's not as easy to roll out at a low dollar amount. It costs a certain amount of money to create a direct mail campaign just to get the right levels of pricing. And for that same price, you could probably conduct 3 or 4 different tests on Facebook. Native advertising is another option that we have available to us. This is where you visit a website like Forbes, and at the bottom of the article, you see advertisements or pictures for related content. That's native advertising. So we can place great advertorials, great content on relevant websites and drive traffic to your offer. We can also use IP marketing. IP marketing is a relatively new patented technology that allows us to match a digital ad with a individual's personal home. So if John Doe lives at 105 Main Street and we have his name and address because we bought a list from a data broker that identified precisely who our prospects are, we can now send digital ads to him just based on his residence. We don't have to have his email address. We don't have to find him on Facebook. We know where he lives, and we can show our digital ads to him on his cell phone, on his laptop, on his any digital web-enabled device. And so this allows us to merge the power of offline data with the ease and simplicity of digital campaigns. The point is, if our messaging is good and our audience is strong, we have a variety of ways to reach those people. Now, it's important that we tighten up our audience. And by that, I mean we need to be as specific as possible, both to the demographics and the psychographics of our people, who they are, and what's going on in their hearts and minds. The truth is we cannot target everyone. We simply can't afford to do that. And our message will be more effective if it's highly targeted. And of course, your course material, your program will be more effective if it's highly targeted. If I am in the higher education space and I help colleges and universities with their recruitment data, and I help them enroll higher quality students who will be more successful at their school and recruit friends that are like them, and I target small Christian colleges that are struggling, I'm going to be much more effective in terms of the return on my investment within that campaign than if I just targeted every university anywhere, because Harvard is not going to be as responsive. Vanderbilt and Stanford and the University of Tennessee are not going to be as responsive to that message as a better prospect for my program will be. And it's the same whether I'm in a business-to-business environment or business-to-consumer. You will be more happy if you're working with your ideal clients as well, because if you've defined them well and you perceive your ideal clients accurately, you're going to enjoy their questions and solving their problems more. Your value as an expert, of course, will also be easily established if you're working in a niche. Just like we know that brain surgeons make more money than internists, it's not because they're necessarily smarter or harder working, but because of the niche and the value that they're in. Just like a cosmetic dental surgeon makes more money than does a general practitioner, Your value increases if you're working within a niche and you're an expert within that niche. And of course, your income will grow dramatically as a consequence of this. And this is very important for our business model, not because money is the end all of everything, but because it's the fuel that perpetuates this model. It's the fuel that allows us to spend the money on advertising necessary to create a sustainable, predictable marketing model. And it's this income that allows us to reach more people and do more good. Let's talk about some narrowing examples. Let's assume that we have an individual who is a marriage and parenting guru. He's a specialist at helping families solve the problems that come with marriages and that come with parenting. Now, he narrows his group to talk only to married Christian couples. Both of those spouses must be engaged. He will not work with a wife who's desperate to save her marriage and a husband who doesn't care. He only works with people who have young children because of the nature of the problems they have and because the desire of the parents to solve those problems early in the child's life. If the child is already a teenager or in college, there's an entirely different set of circumstances and the mindset is very different. But young children, for example, parents are very devoted to solving those problems early. In this case, the gentleman, because of his own background and beliefs, wants to work with traditional Protestant denominations, people who have a creed-based faith. Why was this important? Well, it's important because of his own worldview, the presuppositions he brings to those client conversations, and the recommendations he is likely to make. So he is not looking to deal with, in his case, non-denominational sorts of evangelicals who don't know what the Nicene Creed is. He's not looking to deal with traditional Roman Catholics because of the differences in the way they approach problems. It's not that he could not help those people. It's not that he does not want to help all those people, but he cannot reach those people. He cannot talk to everyone with an effective message. So consequently, he has narrowed it, and this allows us to more accurately target ads to that audience and to speak to them with greater efficacy. And there's less friction for onboarding because he speaks a language they're familiar with. He also likes to work with couples who have homeschooling backgrounds or private schools. If they have made this decision for their children, then it's an indicator to him that they care about the formation of their children and they're willing to invest. We've discovered that homeowners are better clients for him and that he's looking for conservative voters. If they've opted out of the political system and they don't care about voting, it tends to be a sign that they're less engaged. Those people who vote are a little more interested in the world around them. And so this is another marker, if you will, or an indicator for his prospects. And of course, there needs to be a certain income level or they're not going to be able to afford his program. Let's look at another example. A real estate educator who teaches people how to flip houses quickly and effectively for the highest profit margins. His audience was narrowed to what I call alpha men, very dominant, aggressive, confident men over age 30, people who already have experience flipping houses. And this is vital because if they've not experienced the pain of that process, then they won't value the solutions that he's about to offer. They have to have a very strong desire to succeed at a big level. If they want to make $100,000 a year flipping houses, that's not a big enough appetite to justify the program. They need to have a lot of their ego and confidence built up into being successful in this. A very strong desire has to be present. He's also looking for people who are looking for a mentor. They want that father figure or that older brother in their life to help them, to guide them, that they can ask questions of, that they can look to, that will give them the confidence of doing the things that they need to do, even though maybe they don't have that experience and background. So having that mentor in place gives them that additional confidence to go out and make these big decisions. Final example, a stock trading expert. This is a man who teaches people how to trade stocks to dramatically outperform the stock market. He works with affluent men And again, in this case, it's not because he doesn't want to work with women. It's not because he doesn't like women. It's not because he has a lack of success at helping women. He does. But we discovered that by targeting men only and refining the message, our ROI on the ad spend increased and his close rate was higher. So it makes sense for us to spend money where it's most effective. So we're targeting affluent men, in particular entrepreneurs, men who've built successful businesses already, pro athletes that have been successful at any level of professional sports, and doctors. He's looking for people who have a $500,000 net worth. They need to have a minimum of that much to be able to justify the expenses they will incur, that they will need to have in order to generate the higher levels of return. They must have previous trading experience, or else they won't value the significant pains that he's going to help them avoid. They need to have enough experience to know what they don't know. And they have to have a strong desire to become successful as a trader. It's not just enough that they want to have more money. It's not just enough that they want to grow their portfolio. They need to have the desire to become that trader themselves. And he's looking for people who are hard workers. So this gets back to their status in life. If they're already successful entrepreneurs, if they were successful at pro sports, if they're physicians, they're hard workers. They're willing to learn, to work hard, to practice, and develop that skill. All right, let's talk about the sales funnel itself. First of all, we have the ad. This is the tip of the spear, if you will. It's the first experience that our prospect has with us. That ad will, once clicked on, take them to a webinar registration page. And the objective of this registration page is to provide them with enough information, enough benefits about the value that we create, that they will provide their name and email address and register for the webinar. Then there is the webinar itself, and this is the heart of the sales funnel. The objective of the webinar is to present the very best presentation that our very best salesperson could present on his very best day, to outline the benefits, to highlight their problems, to establish the value of solving those problems quickly, to establish your credibility and your expertise, to answer all of the common objections, the frequently asked questions, to do everything that you would do if you had the opportunity to do that. And we want a webinar that's somewhere between 20 minutes and perhaps even an hour long. And the reason that we want that kind of length is we want someone to come through the webinar who's motivated enough to spend that much time discovering about you. And the objective of this is that when they finish the webinar, their questions are answered. They already know you're an expert. They already know you're credible. They understand your philosophy and the things that you do and how you work. They really just need to be closed. So at the conclusion of the webinar, they reach an appointment page, and that is their opportunity to make an appointment with you online. And there is some evidence that suggests that appointment page should be limited to just 2 or 3 days after the time they're watching the webinar itself. The idea being that if they're not motivated enough to make an appointment right away, or if they want to make an appointment with you for a week or two down the road, that by the time that comes around, they're no longer hot anymore. Once they've made that appointment, they're then prompted to fill out a questionnaire. This questionnaire is designed to further qualify them and to provide you with the information necessary to have a meaningful and productive phone call. Then there is the call itself. And on this call, you are really in a consultative mode. There's no hard selling. You're not pushing them to do anything. You're answering their questions. You're determining if they are a good match for you, very much like a physician would do, a complete examination, understanding the problems they're experiencing before recommending a surgery. And you would need to gather all that information. You would need to talk with that prospective patient before you would know what diagnosis is appropriate and what treatment course is going to work. And so we take the same position. Now, we can use selling techniques within the call to enhance your persuasion, but it's not about selling, it's about discovery. Once the person has said that they're in, we provide them with that one-time offer. There's usually a discount for making a commitment right away. We can also provide a payment plan. Those are among the options for pricing. But the next step after the call is to collect some form of payment from them and then to enroll them in your program. Now let's talk about some of the costs involved in setting up and running a funnel like this. First of all, we have the ads themselves. Now, there are lots of different ad buying platforms, lots of different mechanisms for acquiring the traffic, but for the sake of this presentation, we're going to assume an estimated cost of $1 per click. CPC is cost per click. So whether we pay per impressions, whether we have some other form of acquiring traffic, we're going to assume that it costs us $1 to get a visitor to our landing page. And then on that landing page, our objective is to persuade them to watch our webinar. We're going to assume for today that 1 in 20 people engage with us on that landing page. So 80% of the people do not engage with us. So 5% engagement, 95% of the people who visit that landing page do not engage with us. So just 5%, 1 in 20, will do that and sign up for the webinar. So what that means is that our cost per lead, because this person's a lead at this point, we get their name and email, cost per lead of $20. Now they are prompted to attend the webinar. And the webinar is an evergreen webinar. It runs 24 hours a day on the hour. So if I sign up at 9:30, I'm going to be prompted for the webinar that will be playing at 10 o'clock. We're going to assume that only 20% watched that webinar all the way through. The rest, something about it didn't appeal to them. They deselected themselves. They lost interest, whatever. So what that means is we have a $100 cost per prospect. A prospect is someone who has finished the webinar. And so then we have the call. Now the call, we're going to estimate that only 50% of the people who sign up for the call actually show up. Now, this is just a reality. People will watch the entire webinar, schedule the appointment, send in the questionnaire, and then not show up. Why? Who knows? But for our sake, we want to estimate that 50% show up for the phone call, which means that it costs us $200 to get a person on the phone. So we call that a live cost per prospect. Now, let's assume that we have a close rate of just 25%. So 1 in 4 phone calls actually becomes a paying member. Oh, how did we get all these numbers? Well, these numbers have been taken from some other funnels. Now, the costs and the close ratios and all the rest of those things vary from one business model to the next, but these are realistic numbers at each stage of the game. Now, there are some additional costs to these ad costs, and those are the marketing agency fees to make all of this possible. First of all, we have the creation of the course itself. Now, some clients may already have a successful webinar and course that they've already been using, but they don't have the entire system to put it together. So the costs can vary widely. But in our experience, to create your actual course content, these are the 6 to 8 modules that compose the heart of your educational, what you're going to deliver to your group. Usually the cost to create all that is between $5,000 and $15,000. Now, this varies based on length, right? So if you have a 6-week course, it's likely to be less expensive to produce and deliver than a 12-week course. And the sophistication of the production. If the entirety of your course is these kinds of desktop videos that we're doing right now, then the costs are going to be much less than if you have a lot of active live video that needs to be captured, edited, and produced. And of course, what our role is in the scripting and the production of all of this will vary widely as well. If you've already got your course materials and you're convinced they're ready, then our role is much less. Once we've got the course created, the next step is to create the actual marketing funnel. It's like building your house and then inviting people to the house. So we have to create the landing pages. We have to then create the webinar itself, which is the sales presentation. And frankly, the webinar creation can be more difficult and more expensive than the creation of the actual course itself, because let's be honest, dumping information into a course and then packaging it up to be informative is a very different level of task than becoming persuasive and successful at persuasion. In addition to the webinar, we need all of the email funnels that need to be created. Email funnels that drip on people after they've registered for the webinar, the email that drips on people between the webinar and their appointment, the emails that drip on our prospects who've watched the webinar but did not make an appointment for some reason, and then the emails that drip on the actual students. And then, of course, there are emails that we may send out cold to people. So if we have a list of 1,000 chiropractors, and our job is to provide a marketing system to those chiropractors to help them grow their practice, we might buy a list of those chiropractors and email them once a week, pushing them to our webinar. So this content creation all has a value. And these costs for all of this marketing funnel can, again, vary widely. Finally, we have the systems integrations. And so when we have a landing page, that needs to be integrated with a email service provider to send out the email, and integrated with your webinar. And the webinar needs to run every hour on the hour. And the webinar needs to be integrated with analytics and Hotjar, so we know who's watching and for how long, and when people fall out of the webinar so that we know what changes to make. And our calendar scheduling system and the questionnaire and all of the different technical components that make all this work, all of these things, of course, have to be built. Now, once we've built everything, we're now ready to drive traffic to it. And those marketing expenses and those costs associated with it start at $2,500 per month. So if you want to run ads on Google, which is one of our favorite platforms, you're going to spend $2,500 a month with our firm to manage that spend. And you might spend $5,000 in ads or $10,000 in ads, plus our fee to make all that happen. Or maybe it's Google, or maybe it's native advertising, or maybe it's LinkedIn. It may be IP marketing, or it could be direct mail, but our fees start at $2,500. And with that, you get the creatives, the ad copy, the targeting, the management of all this, the execution, and then the ongoing daily optimization, looking at those things to figure out which of those ads are performing better than others, which of that targeting to demographics is performing better than others, and all of the rest of those things. Finally, this does not include your ad spend. Sometimes clients mistake the management fee with the ad spend. The ad spend is what we spend on a platform. If we buy TV from channel 2 in your town, that's the ad spend. If we do direct mail and we have to pay the printer and the designer and the postage, that's the ad spend. The people who make that possible, who manage it, who create the strategy and then execute on it, that's the agency. That's what we do. And then our fees are in addition to that ad spend. Now, let's talk a little bit about our profit sharing model, because in some cases we find that the relationship is great and we want to make it easier for you to launch your course, to get into this business. And in return for our reducing or delaying our fees, we are willing to share in the back end with you so we can become your true profit sharing partners. So an example, let's say you've got a course priced at $49.95. And let's assume for a moment that we have that $800 cost of acquisition that we shared earlier. So your gross profit is $41.95. That is revenue minus your ad spend. Now, if you split that gross profit with us, your marketing partner, because we have reduced or eliminated our fees altogether, then your net profit on that course would be $2,097. Or if we assume that it took 4 phone calls for you to reach that point, you're earning $500 an hour. Now, let's say you're priced at twice that. And many of our client partners are priced at that level or higher. Your gross profit is $91.95. You split the gross with your marketing partner, and your net profit is, as a result, $4,500 or $4,600, which is a little more than $1,100 per hour, again, assuming that 4 phone calls to get to 1 sale. Now, your ROI on the ad spend, this is a common method for measuring the success of the ads themselves, your return on investment. In this case, is going to be somewhere between 6x and 12x. Now, this is by no means a guarantee. In fact, when we first start out, we would expect to see break-even ads, 1-to-1. It's going to take us time to figure out which of those clicks, which of the thousands of people who saw and engaged with us are the ones that are actually converting. But I would point out, to put things in perspective, that the smartest investor in the world, most people believe that's Warren Buffett, he generates a 20% annualized return. So it takes him 4 years or so before he doubles your money. If we do just 2x return on ad spend, then we have doubled your money in as little as 30 days. So to put things in perspective in terms of an investment approach to marketing, even at the low end with a 2x or 3x return, we believe that is a phenomenal return on investment. Let's talk about scaling a little bit. If we can train someone to do the calls for you and pay that person a percentage basis. So for example, let's say after 3 or 6 months of handling these phone calls, of running the system, we know what works, we know what we have to do. We know that for every 4 phone calls, you're going to make 1 sale. Then we can find a person who's a good match for you and for your customers, a person maybe who has a background in your niche, or maybe it's a person who's just a great relationship builder and good on the phone. We have that person listen to lots of your phone calls, take your course, study your material, and we put them to handling the calls for you. Now you've really leveraged your business. Assuming the same examples where we've priced ourselves at $49.95, we have the same gross profit as before. We then have the net profit that's the result of paying that salesman to handle the phone calls for you. Your split now is $18.48. Now, if this person has 4 phone calls a day, he's going to make $10,000 a month. That's pretty good for an inbound phone person. You're going to make $36,000 a month. And again, you're no longer working those hours, so it's difficult even to calculate a return on investment. Now, of course, these numbers would double if we're at the higher tiered pricing. If we're in more of a business environment, or if we're able to charge those $10,000 fees, you can see how this becomes pretty substantial. And although we cannot yet show $100,000 months for our clients, we have a number of colleagues who are doing low 6, and in one case 7 figures per month, because they've scaled up for a team of salespeople. So some conclusions. The system depends completely on the seriousness and the urgency of the problem that you're solving. This is an absolute must. We have to have a high ticket priced group, because otherwise we can't afford the ad spend. So if we have a $1,000 program that we're selling, we're not going to make any money, because we're going to spend $1,000 or more to get those clients. The ad buying, the creative development, the testing of ad copy, all of these things are vital, and they're ongoing, because what worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. And this is what we see running ads on Facebook and Google every single day. Of course, the estimates that we've shown here for potential revenue and profit do not include any upsell or back end. And you can imagine, if just 1 in 10 of your clients buys in at a higher price course, let's say you've got a $5,000 initial offer, and then your upsell to your premium clients is $10,000 or $15,000. If just 1 in 10 of your clients upgrades, you could easily double your income. Or if you have a back-end monthly participation program that's as little as, say, $500 a month, or as much as, say, $2,500 a month, you can see how very quickly, just with a handful of sales per month, that those numbers become very substantial. Thank you for taking the time to watch this presentation. You can contact me through a variety of methods here to talk about your particular program and how we can help you create substantial value for yourself and for the audience that you serve.